Hello, I am the author Michael Campling, and welcome to another time travel fiction Tuesday. And I'm going to be reading from, also beginning with T, my book Trespass, one of the Darkening Stone books. There's a trilogy of 3 novels plus a prequel novella, which you can get actually from my website at michaelcampling.com/free books. You sign up for the newsletter, become a member of my VIP Readers Club, and that's one of the perks. You get a free copy of the prequel as an ebook. I won't do too much introduction. This is the second one. I'm recording this as live. It is actually the Tuesday that I'm doing it. But that means if I make a mistake, I'll just do it again, because that's the way it goes. And the audio is available as a podcast. And you might be able to see my microphone. I keep trying to improve this, so hopefully the sound you are hearing is a nice, clear one. Okay, so previously in Trespass, we met our young hero in the year 2010. I wrote this quite a while ago. Obviously, things have changed since then. And he has inadvertently, after fooling about, fallen into a quarry. I won't do too much spoilers, but it's an abandoned quarry. And this book has several different timelines going all at once. So, without further ado, I'll go in. Straight in. Trespass, The Darkening Stone, read by the author, Michael Campling. Chapter 2, 3500 BC. Wiccan was old. Unnaturally so, some said. He slept an old man's fitful sleep, riddled with disconnected dreams, muddled with distant memories. But tonight, it is not his dreams that disturb him, but something real, something alive, something close. Wiccan snapped awake, lurched upright, called out into the darkness, "Who's there? Father, is it you?" No answer. Wiccan shivered. What had woken him? What had he heard? He shook his head to rouse himself, dispel the confusion of waking. It didn't help. He was drained, couldn't think properly, hadn't been able to for days, not since... His father's voice interrupted his thoughts. "No, my son, don't think of that. Don't let fear steal your thoughts." "No, father." But he had heard something nearby, whispering or rustling, like someone wading through dead leaves. "Hold your breath, Wiccan. Listen." Silence. If he could hear it again, he could identify it. An animal, perhaps. The pounce of a night hunter, the scrabbling of its prey. He'd often heard these sounds on nights as still as this. So why was he afraid? The answer pushed itself to the front of Wiccan's weary mind. It was him. The stranger, the intruder, the sinister interloper who'd slipped secretly into Wiccan's world. It was no use denying it. Wiccan shuddered. Who was the intruder, and why'd he come to torment him? Wiccan did not know, but one thing he had discovered. The intruder was inhumanly stealthy. He could easily have crept close, could even have stolen into his hut as he slept. Wiccan rubbed his eyes, scanned anxiously for any sign of trespass. Moonlight shone through the hut's doorway, threw mischievous shadows onto the stone walls. There was nothing out of place, but that proved nothing, gave no comfort. What should he do? "Father, Shh, Wiccan, listen again. Close your eyes. Focus your senses as I taught you. Listen." Wiccan tried. Despite his fear, he closed his eyes, let his breathing slow, and allowed the ambience of his familiar world to wash over him, flow through him. There was nothing. All was as it should be. Wiccan opened his eyes. Whatever had woken him was no longer nearby, or so he hoped. Wiccan shuffled around on his bedding, turned to face the doorway. As he moved, his glance fell on his father's bed. He didn't like to look at it. Its emptiness saddened him, even though it had been empty for more years than he could remember. He looked away, peered through the doorway and into the darkness outside. Better not to dwell on it, he muttered to himself. Otherwise, the lonely seasons would stretch out in his mind, become an endless succession of desolate winters. At least I have your words, Father, he said, for when I need you most. It is my gift to you, Wiccan, my bequest from the Shade World. Thank you, Father. And Wiccan was grateful. It went some way to make up for his loss. Father, he said, then he hesitated. He'd learned that Cleofan's shade came and went of its own free will. It gave advice when it wanted to, but he couldn't command it. He couldn't question it too closely. Wiccan pursed his lips. He needed help. He would take the chance. Father, someone has come here, an intruder. I do not know who or why. I know he hides. I know he watches me, but I don't know what to do. A silence. Wiccan hung his head, certain that Cleofan's shade had gone. But then, from close by, he heard his father's voice again. A villager? Wiccan thought for a moment. I can't be certain. I don't think so. They fear this place. They won't come here after dark. But I feel the intruder has been here all day. Yes, the villagers are ruled by their foolish fears. But fear can move men in strange ways. It can bring suspicion, even violence. Wiccan swallowed dry-mouthed. This wasn't what he'd wanted to hear. He is a threat? Perhaps, but remember, my son, they need you. They need your skills. Wiccan nodded, unconvinced. Yes, Father. Tell me what happened. Wiccan forced himself to concentrate, to order his muddled memories. All day long I've had the feeling someone was there. Little things, a twig snapping, a bird's warning call, and I was almost certain I was being watched. He paused. So far it was an unimpressive tale. He hurried on. But then I saw him. Tell me. Wiccan spoke quickly now, relieved that Cleofan was listening. He told his father how it had been evening, the end of a hard day's work. He'd been tending his fire, intent on coaxing the smouldering bundle of twigs into a flame. But the wood had been damp. It had steamed and spat, but would not light. He'd added more from his precious supply of dry tinder and blown gently. At last he'd been rewarded with a lick of flame. He'd stood quickly, coughing from the smoke and damp air. He'd needed more dry wood. Immediately. So I sort of misread that a bit. He'd needed more dry wood. Immediately. He'd rushed to the nearby hawthorn bush. It was old and dense, a good source of dry kindling. But as he'd stooped, parted the branches, he'd seen it. A pair of eyes, wild, staring at him, the face hidden in shadows. A dark figure. A boy, no, a young man, crouched with the poise and stillness of a hunter watching his prey. Wiccan had called out, trying to hide the fear in his voice. Who are you? What are you doing here? For a moment the figure had frozen, alarmed at having been discovered. And then he had gone. Slipped away, almost silently. Wiccan had called after him, more out of frustration than hope of success. What do you want? Why do you hide like a coward? Show yourself if you are a man. But the interloper had vanished, and Wiccan had hung his head, his eyes stinging with tears. Wiccan finished his account, took a deep breath, and waited. Cleofan's response was a long time coming, but when it did, it was unusually stern and commanding. Wiccan, outsiders must not learn our secret. No, of course not, Father, but what shall I do? How can I stop him? You will do what is needed, whatever the cost. Do you understand? Wickham was taken aback. He'd never known his father to sound so angry. He nodded dumbly. But, father, he's young and strong. I am old. I cannot fight him. So how can I stop him, father? How? He waited, but there was no answer. Father, I need... But it was no use. Clearfan's shade had gone, and there was no way of knowing when it would return, if ever. Clearfan sometimes stayed away for many days. In those long silences, Wickham always feared his father had forsaken him forever, his grief like an old wound that would not heal. Wickham sighed. What would he do without his father? Even tonight, as he'd woken, he had called out to him. When there'd been no reply, he'd been confused. In his dream, he'd been young again, working at Clearfan's side. Now Wickham tried to recall the dream, to cling to its simple happiness. When he'd been a boy, his father had always been nearby, watching over him, passing on his knowledge and his skills. The memory of Clearfan's proud smile warmed Wickham for a moment. But then the damp night air needled his aching joints. It would not let him forget his fears. He was an old man, old and alone, isolated and vulnerable. Wickham sat, hunch-shouldered, and stared apprehensively out through the doorway. It started to rain, a fine drizzle lit by the pre-dawn gloom. He could see very little. He shivered. Under his breath, he cursed his tired and aging eyes. He would have to go out soon, attend to his duties. And what would he find? Would the intruder be out there somewhere, watching? It seemed inevitable. But what would he do about it? What could he do? His ordeal, though bad enough, had hardly begun. Wickham thought of his father's words, muttered them to himself. Outsiders must not learn our secret. Do what is needed, whatever the cost, whatever the cost. He looked at his gnarled hands, clenched them into fists. His father was right. Of course he was. This outsider threatened the purpose, the core of Wickham's existence. It would be right to drive him away, fight him, and even to kill him. After all, the intruder could not be one of the villagers. So I read that again. After all, the intruder could not be one of the villagers. Even if they'd overcome their fear of the place, no one had time to lurk among the trees day after day. It was beyond all reason. Wickham would have to deal with him, and he would have to do it on his own. It would have been different, Wickham thought, if I'd taken a wife, raised a strong son to protect me. But no, he snorted in contempt. Don't be a fool, he thought. You've made your choices, accepted your responsibilities. Now the sky grows lighter and you have duties to perform. Wickham rose unsteadily to his feet. Whatever the day brought, he would face it, just as he always had, with the help of the shades. He would not fail them, would not fail the memory of his father. He must make haste. It was time to prepare. He stooped to pass through the doorway, then straightened his back to survey his realm. Its familiarity gave him a little confidence. This place was his world, his territory. Here he could practice his unique skills. Again, Wickham reminded himself of Clearfan's words. They need you. They need your skills. He walked to the nearest rock face, reached out, laid his hand reverently against its pale, glistening surface, spoke to it. I am the only one, aren't I? He said. The only one you'll allow. You wouldn't stand for the foolish village folk with their fearful fireside stories, trying to scrape away at you with their deer antlers. How they fear you. They only come here when they need my help. They don't know how I coax you into good stone blocks, straight and true. And they don't want to find out. They only know that our stone makes fine, sturdy huts that will outlast them. They wonder how I stand this place, when it is you that has tolerated me all these years. I am your servant, and you are my protector, my shade stone, it's hard to say, my shade's stone, my Skiado Stan. The cool touch of the rock soothed Wiccan. He felt its strength flowing into him, trickling through his fingertips. The shades were on his side. They would bring back the peace he needed for his work. The intruder was just a man, nothing more. He would be dealt with. Everything would be as it was meant to be. Wiccan allowed himself a grim smile. How strange it was that he, whose name meant watcher, had become the one who was watched. Ooh, and that's the end of chapter 2. So, for those who've been following closely and listened sharply, so you may have noticed he calls the place where he is quarrying the rock, Skiadu Stan, which is based on the old part pieces, the Neolithic pieces that I've set all that time ago, are based on Old English words. And though it's fair to say that this is older than Old English, had to use something, and of course Old English had to come from somewhere. So I am saying that it came from these words. You know, anyway, who can prove me wrong? Unless you're around in 3500 BC or BCE, as we tend to call it these days, before the Common Era. So that's just an extra little inside bit for you. And of course, Scared Stan. Stan is from where we got stone from. And the quarry that the boy fell into was called Scadderston Pit. So you can see perhaps the modern word Scadderston came from Scaredustan. So just in case it's been a while, because I missed last week's, so it may have been a couple of weeks. So I'll give you that little tidbit of information. So yeah, that's chapter 2 from Trespass, the first Darkening Stone novel. And it is throughout. All the 3 books are set over several time periods. And most of the action is located in the same place, but at different times. A little hint for you. But I think that makes it an interesting, quite a unique kind of story. You call it a time slip novel, if you will. It's hard to categorise. There is a certain amount of time travel, but people aren't zipping backwards and forwards as they are in some time travel books. This is a bit subtler than that in many ways. Kind of very built on the individual characters in their different times and in their different stories. Well, that's going to make a big noise, isn't it? I might cut that out, the sound, because that's just stupid, hitting it with my hat. Maybe I should leave it in for authenticity. So anyway, yeah, you should be able to find that if you want to read along or follow along. It's the ebook is on Amazon and in public libraries, so you may have to request it in your library. And paperback is also available, and I will put links on the various places. So depending where you found this, a good place to find all my readings is authormichaelcampling.substack.com, because they are all on there as separate sections. And if you don't know already, in Substack you can subscribe to separate sections of a Substack, and that way you only get the emails for that section. So you can have all 4 readings plus my ordinary kind of like blog posts, which would give you like 5 emails a week, which you may or may not want. Or if you're listening to this in a podcast app or via a podcast website, that's a good way to do it. That's one reason I'm doing the audio separate. I'm trying to keep the audio really nice for audio listeners. So subscribing to the podcast in the usual way will deliver that podcast to you, whatever app or service you are using. So it should be on Spotify, YouTube podcasts, Apple Podcasts, that Pocket Cast. Those are kind of the main ones, and I think they kind of spread out from there. If there is a podcast service where you cannot find Time Travel Fiction Tuesdays with Michael Campling or any of my other readings, just let me know. Drop me a line. You can contact me, or you can comment on the Substack. That's one nice thing about it. You can also comment on the YouTube posts, of course, as well. And I hope you are finding it enjoyable. We're just getting into the story. I hope you are liking the idea of poor old Wiccan living alone in the quarry doing something mysterious with the stones. We haven't found out what yet. We haven't found out, but all will be revealed when more things happen. And do chapter 3 next Tuesday. Should be ready for you. which is back into 2010. So you'll go and find out what's happened to Jake. And later on, we'll come to a third time period. And at one point, I did make a diagram of different books and which timeline they covered, which I might be able to dig out and put on the Substack as a text item, just for you to, if you want to refer to it. So, hope you enjoyed it. If you did, liking, commenting, sharing, all those things are wonderful, because they let the jolly old algorithms know that people are liking, people are listening, and they're watching, and that way it might push it out to some other people. You know, we may as well harness these things for good. Instead of pushing adverts on people, we're trying to help them to find something they'll enjoy, which is the way I look at it. Okay, whatever you're reading, happy reading. If you're reading a really nice time travel story or something, I'd love to know about it. That would be interesting to comment over on the Substack or on YouTube. If you're liking this, that's always really good to hear, because if I don't get any comments, I kind of think, well, am I just talking to nobody? But it's really nice just to have odd likes and comments. It all helps, because you're thinking, oh, okay, somebody listened to my work. Thank you very much for doing that. And I will read to you again soon. Wednesday doesn't have an actual reading at the moment. Who knows? I might plug one in there. And the next one will be Thriller Fiction Thursdays, and I'm reading Lawful Duty, my police procedural. And Science Fiction or Sci-Fi Fridays, I'm reading Dial for Gravity, and Mystery Mondays, I'm reading Study in Stone. And all good fun. All right. Hope you're keeping safe and well. Look after yourselves. Take care. Happy reading, and bye for now.